Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. There's a new exciting novel that just came out written by Priscilla Dee Valenzuela. It's titled Hidden Away, and I'm really happy to welcome Priscilla to the show. We get to talk all about this book. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited to be here.
It's exciting to be talking with you, and I'm really curious to find out about Hidden Away, Priscilla. Can you tell me what you've written about here?
Well, it's about a crazy lady, long story short. It's about a couple of detectives. It's a part of a series of novels, first off, I should say. So every story has the same detectives in it. There's a different crime happening. And in the second one, these detectives and the city, where all of this is happening at, the city of Havensworth, everyone finds out that there's this nurse, and throughout the story, she slowly unravels, and they find out that she's kidnapped a boy.
Interesting, Priscilla. Where did the idea for this come from?
Honestly, the book, it was hugely inspired by my son. He's autistic, and he has trouble communicating. So originally I had been just toying with writing about a story about a boy who had issues with communicating, nonverbal or mostly nonverbal. And I got this image in my head of this dark shadow, a little boy sitting in the dark. And I was imagining these windows above his head. And I didn't want this little boy to be exactly like my son. Obviously, I wanted to change up some stuff. So what I did was I was just like, okay, we have this little boy here. He's nonverbal or mostly nonverbal, but he's not handicapped. Why is he like this? And that whole concept is what helped me create one of my favorite villains of all the stuff I've written so far. And that's Nurse Helen Baxter, who's the bad, I should say, woman of the story. It's all about her, this little boy, and these detectives finding out about what's going on.
So with detectives, would this be for fans, you would say, of mysteries primarily?
Mysteries, like psychological thrillers, that kind of stuff. If you like to be awake at night and wonder how something could go so far, why something could happen like that, like this story is a story for you.
So this is the first in a series. So before this, Priscilla, what's your writing background look like? Have you done this before?
Actually, yes. This is my second book in a series.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. So when I started with the concept of Hidden Away, I was like, okay, I kind of already know I'm going to have these detectives there. I know that this story is going to be happening in the city of Havensworth. That's the name of my fictional city. It's been a lot of fun just, taking characters from the first book, not all of them, but some of them, and developing them and making them stronger and being more a part of the story. And, I'm Mexican. I grew up in a family who watched novellas, so I like the drama. And I had a lot of fun writing Helen because that's what she is. She is all drama.
Do you know how far out the series is going to go? Do you have books planned, or are you just going to kind of keep going and see?
I'm hoping that this will be an 8-book series.
Nice.
I'm working right now with the 3rd book, trying to get everything going with that. But I already have the 4th book written. I worked on that with a really awesome critique group. So a group of fellow writers who are all, either already published or they're working on books that they also want to publish. So I got a lot of great advice from them and tips to help me with some of the future writing. So it's been fun.
How long of a journey were you on for Hidden Away once you got down, started writing it, clear up through when it was published and ready to go out there?
For just the writing part, I wrote that maybe in about a couple months. And that was writing it without editing. Like, I just wanted to get the story out. Like, write it all out and then go back and add to it or take away or edit, whatever I need to do. and then probably about a year. I mean, it takes a while for the publishing companies to get everything rolling. So, it was a huge process. And it was fun being a part of it with Newman Springs for the second novel.
I think readers are going to love this. Again, the book is called Hidden Away. It's written by Priscilla Dee Valenzuela, and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing, so really you can get it anywhere. Find it at Amazon, and Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Priscilla, how nice it's been talking with you tonight. Thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was fun. Thank you.
The new uplifting book, written by author Leroy Banks, it's abbreviated GPS. It's titled The God Positioning System. I love that title. And Leroy is here with me now, and we get to talk all about this. Leroy, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Can you tell me, Leroy, all about the God Positioning System? What can readers find here?
So the God Positioning System is a book about allowing God to lead us instead of being led by our own way of thinking or by our flesh. It's really saying that God formed us in the womb. He knew us. He ordained us before we were ever born. He has a purpose for our life, and we need to let him lead us and guide us towards that purpose instead of us trying to do it on our own.
How did this come about, Leroy? Where'd you get the idea to write this?
My pastor at the time, Bishop Lawrence R. Robertson, he was teaching about God giving us ideas, God ideas. And I just began to pray and say, Lord, I want a God idea. I want an assignment. I want a God idea, something to help me to just become a better person, a better Christian. I need a God idea, something like that. And the book came into my mind, and the Lord just gave me the title as I was driving to work one day, and I got caught in traffic. And when I got to work, my boss lives in the same city, but he made it to work on time, and I was late. And he said the reason that he made it on time because he turned on his GPS, and it directed him around the accident that was on the highway at that time. And the book began to form at that time of how God can just lead us around all the things that's happening in our lives.
Leroy, while you were writing this, did you have a specific reading audience in mind?
Well, I'm hoping new Christians, even older Christians, anyone who's looking to just walk in the assignment that God has given them, and anyone who's just seeking to do God's will. This is a book that I pray that they would get.
Leroy, what does your writing background look like? Are you new to all of this?
I am brand new. I didn't know anything about writing a book, had no desire to write a book. The Lord gave me this back in 2018, and it just took a while for me to really be obedient because I'm Leroy Banks. Who's going to buy a book by Leroy Banks? Nobody knows Leroy Banks. But then it just be obedient. Just do what God tells you to do, and then the rest is in God's hand.
So being your first book, Leroy, was this whole process a really long one for you?
It was a long process for me, yes, sir.
What did you find the most challenging thing about the publishing end of things? Once you hand off your manuscript to the publisher, there's a lot of things you got to do there. What did you find the most challenging part about all of that?
Just the waiting, not knowing what's going on as they were reviewing the manuscript and as they were correcting all the mistakes and getting everything out, It's like, I want it now. I want it now. I want to put it in the microwave and get it back now. But That's not how it worked. They took their time and they did a really great job on the book. I appreciate their efforts on it.
And after all the time, all the work that you put into this, you open up your mailbox that one day and there it finally was, your first copy. You got to hold the God Positioning System finally. What was going through your head, Leroy?
It was great. My wife actually went to the mailbox and she was super excited. She came, look what I got. And I'm thinking, okay, what does she have? And then she showed me the book. It was just, she was more excited than I was, I think. She has supported me 100% throughout this whole process.
And now that you're officially a published author, Leroy, when you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
For me, it's just feeling like God gave me an assignment and I completed it. It took a long time, but I completed the assignment that God gave me. And now, I'm looking for what's the next thing that you want me to do, Father? Or, how do I sell the book? Now, you helped me to write it. Now, how do I get it out there? I don't know nothing about selling a book. Lord, I need your divine direction to show me how to sell the book now. But this just increased my faith that he could help me and lead me and guide me to do this. So I know that he can lead me and guide me in every step of my life.
Well, it sounds like this book is really going to bless a lot of people. Again, the title is The God Positioning System. This is written by Leroy Banks, published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can pick it up everywhere, really, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, also down the street at your local bookshop. Well, Leroy, thanks again for coming on the show. It was great talking with you.
Thank you. Good talking to you, too.
Author Jeanie Traub has written a book offering hope and guidance to those battling serious illnesses. The book's titled The Healing Gift, Defeating Cancer. And we get to talk all about this. I'm really happy that the author, Jeanie, is sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jeanie, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Well, thank you, Corey, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my book.
The pleasure's all mine, Jeanie. Can you tell me about the book? What can readers find when they open up The Healing Gift?
Well, The Healing Gift is my personal story about my diagnosis with terminal cancer. I walk the people through my journey spiritually and emotionally and physically, the things that I learned to help them overcome serious illnesses and diagnoses that they've had.
So this is primarily for readers who are battling these serious illnesses. Could this be helpful for maybe their families and loved ones as well?
Well, absolutely, because I do address a lot about people who have lost loved ones to cancer or a devastating diagnosis. It puts things in perspective. When somebody gets a devastating diagnosis, you're kind of lost. It's the first time you're dealing with it, and you really don't have any guidance other than the diagnosis and the terrible treatments that they're going to give you. And this helps walk you through another aspect of what you can do for yourself and do something proactive to help you overcome the disease.
How did the idea for this come about, Jeanie? What made you decide to write the book and get this published?
Well, when I was healed of cancer, I was so grateful that I got down and I just asked God what I could do for him. And he said, write a book and help me break cancer, sickness, and disease off my people. So that's what inspired me to do it. I never thought I would be an author, but that was my inspiration.
Oh, congratulations for getting that first one out there. That's such a huge deal. Being your first one, Jeanie, was this a really long process for you?
Well, this was a very unique process because I not only had terminal cancer, but I had seizures, memory loss, cognitive issues, and a lot of other things. So I started writing this book when I was dealing with all of that. And I think that that was part of the healing process because it helped my brain to reconnect and so forth. I actually didn't get the last chapter until 20 years later. So the last chapter of the book is Pearls of Wisdom 20 years later. And I have a phenomenal story in that last chapter for the readers to read.
So that day finally came and you got your first copy of The Healing Gift in. It's finally a real thing. You're holding it in your hands, Jeanie. What was going through your head at that moment?
Well, I was very happy that I could touch more people because not only was I healed of cancer, but I went on to help many others overcome devastating diagnoses. So for the last 20 years, I've been helping other people. And in this book, this is what I wish everybody knew about cancer and sickness and disease and how to heal their body. Because healing is a free gift from God. He's put everything inside our bodies to be healthy and whole. And this book explains how to do that. It explains the spiritual part, the emotional part, and mainly just keeping your faith strong and giving people a lot of hope.
Jeanie, once you handed your manuscript off to Christian Faith Publishing, you started that publishing process. There's a lot involved there. What did you find the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Waiting for it to get published. I think, you spend so much time working on it and going over it. And I learned that editors edit other editors. And so at one point, you just have to get your publication out there and go for it. And that's what I would like other publishers to know is that if you have a book inside you, just get started with it. Start writing it down, and give people hope and inspiration in this world.
What are the chances that you might be writing another in the future? Have you thought about that?
Well, actually, I've written 4 other books already. I have a few more on my plate after that, so I guess I'm going to be a Christian author.
Oh, just a little bit ago, you encouraged authors to just go for it. Jeanie, do you have any more advice? Anything you might have learned along the way of doing this that you could help out the aspiring authors with?
Yes, I think to get a title to your book is really important. And I think to get the chapters is very important. And once you get those down, then it can kind of flow and you have a guideline of how to process it and how to go through your book. Because if you can have that down, that's kind of your guideline to writing your future book.
Well, this book is definitely going to touch the lives of so many people. Again, the title is The Healing Gift, Defeating Cancer. It's written by Jeanie Traub and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can find it anywhere really, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Jeanie, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. I really appreciate you being here and telling me all about this wonderful book.
Well, thank you so much, Corey. It's been a pleasure.
Author Linda Greene's new audiobook explores how the mind can impact our overall health and wellness. The audiobook is titled Mind Your Thoughts, Activate Your Healing, How the Mind-Body Connection Causes Sickness, Healing, and Aging. And we're going to talk all about this. I'm really happy that the author, Linda, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Linda, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you, Linda. Can you tell me what readers and audiobook listeners are going to find whenever they open up or listen to Mind Your Thoughts, Activate Your Healing?
Oh, they're going to get a lot of information that helps them with navigating their life, you might as well say. Because basically what the book is about is it kind of is a reminder to all of us that we were born with many, many God-given talents and gifts. And we were never taught that, unfortunately. My book really reminds us that we are really powerful in our minds, what we think. We are considered powerful creators. But like I said, this is something that we were never taught, unfortunately. But it is within all of us to create our own reality. And the book basically can tell you about that. When we're talking about our minds can cause sickness, our minds can cause healing, and also can cause aging. That's really the premise of the book. In my studies, what I basically wanted to let people know is and point out is that our minds really function on the law of belief. And what that means is whatever you believe and feel to be true long enough becomes a reality. So if we're sitting there, maybe we came home from work, we had a hard day, our boss is having issues here and there, and you're sitting there and you're worried about it. And if you let that worry fester for any length of time, because most people, they'll sit there and they'll sleep on it worried. Some people can't even sleep. This is what causes our bodies to get sick. It causes our cells to, work in a way that causes sickness, causes diseases. And this is just something it's just close to my heart. I just felt that I needed to talk about it, to let people know this. Because, like I said, we were never taught this.
Linda, did you have a specific reading audience in mind? It sounds like we could all use this.
Exactly. It's something for everybody. I really would recommend it for younger folks because if they learn these principles early, just think how wonderful their life would work out, if they knew that what they keep in their minds is something that could, eventually cause sickness or illness, later on. It's really for anybody, but yeah. I would love to be able to go to schools and talk about this subject with the kids and just to kind of see where they're at. Because, if you think about it, all of us are dealing with, just look at the world now. You got a lot of people that are angry, because of, elections and, just all the kind of things that are going on in their life. They got anger, they got anxiety. They've got all kind of things going on. And what happens is if you let those things fester and you take it out on other people, who does that hurt? Who does that really hurt? It hurts the person. You could sit up there and throw a punch at somebody, but the problem is the one that is sitting there and they're focused on this anger or anxiety or whatever it was that caused that, they're the ones that's going to be hurt in the long run, So, yeah, it's something that we all really need to know how to handle our emotions and handle our situations a little bit better than, a lot of people do.
And we're talking about the audiobook edition, and, all that time you're writing the book, you're seeing these words on the page or on the screen, and now you're hearing your own book being read back to you, Linda. What was that like?
I thought that was wonderful. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. the woman that read on my behalf was very, very close to me. Like I said, I'm a minister, so, I wanted her to have like a really nice kind of a sweet attitude that people could relate to, hearing the voice. So I thought it was wonderful.
What an important book. I think lots of people are going to be helped by this. Again, the title is Mind Your Thoughts, Activate Your Healing: How the Mind-Body Connection Causes Sickness, Healing, and Aging. This is written by Linda Greene and published by the Audiobook Network, so go wherever you usually go to get your audiobooks, and you'll be able to find this. Places like Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Linda, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me all about this book.
I appreciate you inviting me.
The new book by author Roland Nelson is a comprehensive exploration of biblical prophecy. The book's titled The Revelation of Jesus Christ Decoded. And I get to find out more about this book. I'm really happy that the author, Roland, is here with me now. Roland, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you, and I'm curious about the Revelation of Jesus Christ Decoded, Roland. Can you tell me what readers are going to get into here?
Well, it's about the book of Revelation, and the book of Revelation itself is quite cryptic.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go through it, it's very difficult, probably the most difficult book to understand because of the way it's written. And most scholars and theologians have examined this book, and their commentaries are such that they look at the book from the natural perspective. So what happened was I did a Bible study with a friend, and they led it. Again, they followed the natural interpretation of what that book meant. And I just felt in my heart, and the Holy Spirit tell me that there was deeper meaning within that book than what was being said. So when I wrote the book, I wrote it from not only the natural perspective, what others have said and done before, but I looked at it metaphorically, and I looked at it spiritually on spiritual interpretation and so on. And I looked at every single line of Revelation, but not just the lines, but in some cases the words themselves that needed to be interpreted properly for the reader to understand its fuller context and meaning. So that's what you're getting in my book, is a complete context of the fuller, deeper meaning of Revelation.
Now, when it comes to the reading audience, Roland, who did you have in mind for this?
Well, mostly I thought that Christians would be reading this book, but it's not just designed for Christians. Even non-Christians will understand what Christianity is all about. If someone wanted to know what Christianity is all about without getting into doctrine and religiosity and things like that, what others have talked about, it's strictly I'll call it scholarly from that perspective, that it can be looked at from. I tried to be a third person in it so that readers will look at it and say, okay, now I get it on this, versus bringing in personal opinion on things. So with some exception, of course.
When it comes to writing and publishing and all of that, Roland, are you experienced in that, or is this your first time at it?
This is my first time.
Congratulations. Was this a long process then, the writing and publishing and everything?
It took 2 full years to write and bring to publishing, yes.
That publishing process, there's a lot involved there. It can be drawn out at times. What did you find the most challenging part of that process for you?
I thought constant review, editing to make sure everything was in its place. My publishers did a great job on that, and I worked with them closely, and it worked out well.
Then after that time and all the work that you put into it, you finally get your first copy, and it's real. The finished product, got to hold it in your hands. Roland, what was that like? What was that moment like for you?
Like a weight off my shoulder, like, wow, it's finished. And yet it hasn't. I'm now teaching Revelation, and so I put together presentations and things like that so that others can hear what Revelation is all about.
Have you given thought to maybe writing and publishing more down the road?
I have not. This was a fairly lengthy book, and so I haven't even thought about it. I feel that my calling at this point is to teach what's in the book and what Revelation is all about.
This is your first published book. Now you're officially a published author. So, Roland, when you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
It's just a sense of accomplishment, a feeling of accomplishment that I never, ever thought I would write a book, but I was prompted to write it and to finish it. And the way it turned out, I'm quite thankful that it worked out as well as it did. I think it's solid and it's good. So I hope other readers see that as well.
The title again is The Revelation of Jesus Christ, Decoded. It's written by Roland Nelson, published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can pick it up anywhere, places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also down the street at your local bookshop. Well, Roland, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about this. It was really nice talking with you tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
The book I'm looking at is an inspirational journey of redemption and faith. It's titled Lies to Light. It's the new book written by Brandy Seigneur. And we're going to talk all about this. I'm very happy to welcome the author, Brandy, to the show. Brandy, welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm all curious about Lies to Light and what readers are going to get into here, Brandy. Can you tell me all about this?
Yes, it's just a story of my life starting from the womb all the way up. It goes through talking about anything from rejection. It talks about adoption. It talks about chronic pain, anybody that's experienced that, and just kind of a roller coaster book through all different kinds of emotions for many different people to sit and enjoy a quick read, but very impactful. It talks about just how God can move mountains, how God can turn bad situations to good. And so I just hope to leave everybody with an encouraging message and that at least one person receives Christ from reading my book and also just receives some positivity from maybe the negativity that they've endured in their own lives.
Brandy, what kinds of readers would this be most suited for?
I would honestly just say adults. Some of it isn't really suitable for children with just some of the roller coaster things I talked about, but definitely for any adult.
Was this an easy thing to write for you, and how did you decide to do this?
I started writing about 7 years ago, just kind of writing out my emotions, my thoughts, definitely spirit-led to start writing my story. It was not an easy thing to write. I didn't realize when you write a book like this, you kind of relive every moment. So as far as like when my grandma passed, how hard that was to be in the room, holding her hand in that moment. So yeah, very real, very raw.
Have you ever done this kind of thing before, or are you new to all this?
When I was younger, I wrote a lot of poetry and stuff like that, and I've written little short stories here and there over my lifetime, but never really took on writing a book, never even really knew it was going to turn into a book.
Oh, congratulations on getting that first one out there, Brandy. Was this a long process, the writing and publishing and everything?
It definitely was. In the meantime, you'll read in my story that we adopted a beautiful baby girl. That hampered my writing a little bit, caring for a newborn baby up to a toddler. But yeah, I definitely just made myself sit down at times. I have a very supportive husband. I was able to sit down at times and continue writing, even though I knew I had to endure those emotions at the same time.
Then once you're finished with your manuscript, you hand that off to Christian Faith. You start that publishing process, and that can be pretty involved. Brandy, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
The publishing itself, you write a book and you think, well, where do I go from here? I had actually went to another author's book signing, and I kind of asked him where he went through. He mentioned Christian Faith. I gave them a call, not knowing what my chances were to get it accepted. A couple weeks later, they actually called and told me that my book was accepted. And so there I just saw things moving forward. I have a publication specialist that, we keep in touch. We definitely kept in touch during the whole process. She kind of helped guide me through every part of my book from the editing stages on.
I could only imagine what you were thinking and feeling whenever you got to hold your first copy for that first time. It was a real thing, finally, after all that time. What was that like, Brandy?
When I got my first copy in the mail, I cried in excitement and joy. My baby girl was there with me. My husband was there with me. It was to see it, not on a screen, to actually be holding it in my hand was just very special to me.
And now you're officially a published author. So when you think about that, Brandy, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
The most rewarding is I just know that God started this journey for me. And honestly, I don't feel like I'm done yet.
So are you thinking maybe you'll write some more here in the future?
I'm hoping to.
Now, while you were writing, did you find yourself having maybe a bit of a routine to it? Maybe you'd write early in the morning or late at night? Or did you find yourself more just writing kind of as you had that time or you had that sort of inspiration come on?
I definitely found that in the morning, it was a little more fresh to me. So I would keep a notebook on my nightstand, and things that came to me in the middle of the night, I would write on my notebook. When my daughter was little, I definitely would say I caught them nap times as much as possible.
I think so many readers are going to find help and hope in the pages of this book. So if you're listening right now, go and check this out. Again, it's titled Lies to Light. It's written by Brandy Seigneur and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere, really. Places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Brandy, I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight and telling me all about this. It's been really nice chatting with you tonight.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it.
Author Joe Ray's new book. It's titled Mockingbird, An Angel of Light. It's a tale of faith and redemption. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. I'm really happy that Joe is right here with me at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Joe, welcome. I appreciate you joining me here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Joe, I'm curious about Mockingbird and Angel of Light. So can you tell me what readers can expect here?
Sure, absolutely. So the book is based, there's a little bit of a backstory, previous years of my life with some kind of spiritual warfare that I dealt with as a young child. But this book pertains to a specific experience that I had regarding spiritual warfare. And this was now almost 5 years ago, but it was an experience I had. I thought that it was book worthy, and I kind of felt led, by the creator to go ahead and get it down on paper while it was still fresh in my mind. So it's pretty much just a verbatim account of what I experienced as a battle between goodness and evil. And that took place over the course of one night.
Joe, what sorts of readers did you have in mind for this?
That's a good question. I actually didn't write the book with a specific audience in mind. I just got it down for me, for my own recollection, but also I wrote the book as is, as a memoir, as a nonfiction. It's one of those books that, can be a little hard to believe, but once I can get the reader convinced that what they're reading did happen to me specifically, I think it becomes an interesting story. Yeah, no specific real audience in mind. However, if anyone out there is like me, I love nonfiction stories, whether it's a book or a documentary or a movie. When it's a nonfiction account of an experience or something that someone went through, it's more interesting to me. I'm not a huge fantasy or fiction or sci-fi fan. I tend to engage with true stories. And so this memoir is exactly that. It's a true story.
So is this your first published work, Joe?
It actually is. Yep. This is the first book that I've published. I'm excited about it, and I'm certainly glad that I took the time to get it down and get it published. And again, like I said, one, just for me, but two, for anyone else that might be interested in listening and reading the story.
So being that this is your first book, did this take a long time to write and put through that publishing process?
It did. Without a doubt, the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. To be honest with you, Corey, it probably took 6 months for me to build up the courage to actually write about it. And then when I did and I got it down and it was accurate and it was all on paper, then, of course, we went through the editing and the different processes of going through publishing a book. This is my first time going through that process. So it was a little timely, but I think it all came together pretty well.
What would you say was the most challenging part of that publishing end of things for you?
I think for me in this specific experience, it was me building up the courage to go ahead and get it down and write about it. Once I felt like I was spiritually led to go ahead and get this down on paper. So the hardest part was just getting out the pen, getting out the paper, and getting this down on paper because, as everyone knows, especially with traumatic events in your life, the mind has a way of forgetting about it the further away it gets. So I wanted to get it down while it was all still fresh, and I knew that I was giving an accurate account, but it did take me a little while to build up the courage to be able to do that. I think the hardest part was getting started.
I believe it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like seeing that finished product, though, the fruits of your labor. So when you finally got your first copy in, Joe, and you're holding this thing in your hands for the first time, what's going through your head?
Yeah, it was a feeling of accomplishment. It really was. I'm not a huge reader. I do read. I'm not an avid reader. So, my friends, and when I got the hard copy in my hand and it was published, and I was telling my buddies I'm a published author, they kind of caught them by surprise a little bit. But yeah, definitely a feeling of accomplishment. I felt like, I've done my part in getting this book put together, and now, I'll leave it up to the creator on where it goes from here.
Well, this sounds like a book I think a lot of readers are going to be into, and I definitely recommend that you check it out. Again, the title of this is Mockingbird, An Angel of Light. This is written by Joe Ray and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere. Go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble, go to iTunes, or take a walk down the street to your local bookshop. You'll be able to pick it up. Joe, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight and learning a little bit about your story and about this book. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely, Corey. Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
There's a thrilling journey across the cosmos in the new book written by J.G. Cosgrove and DG Trujillo. The book's titled Pandora's Space Tales. And I have J.G. right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're going to talk all about this book. J.G., welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Anytime. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm curious to find out all about Pandora's Space Tales. Can you tell me what readers can expect here?
Well, it's basically you're seeing her adventures through the eyes of a cat, not just through it as a narrative, but you're actually experiencing what she's going through and how she's going about things and how she feels about things. So it's kind of you get in very close to the character.
Oh, I love this idea. How'd you come up with it? Where did this come from?
Just watching people, watching my cats, watching animals, and just basically thinking, what would it be to be an animal like that? And what would you see in an adventure as? Just basically took it from there.
I love it. What kinds of readers did you have in mind for this?
Anybody who wants a adventure in space, this is why it's in space, but anybody who wants a good adventure to see the world through a different set of eyes, kind of getting to know people and getting to see becoming a part of the team, part of a group or crew, basically like that.
JG, is this your first time publishing and everything, or have you done this kind of thing before?
I did it a while back, but it's a new step forward with my co-writer, and it's in a new venture, and I enjoy all of it all the time.
Was this a long adventure for you to take, the writing and publishing, all that?
Yes, it's been a long adventure, but with her, she's been able to keep me on track, and we've been both working on this, and we actually travel so that we can see and get the ideas for the different stories.
So that day comes, and after all your work and everything you put into this, you get your first copy, the finished product is finally there. What's that like?
It's very exhilarating. I mean, you're holding it in your hand, and it's like, this is real. And I want to share it with so many people. It's like, so, yes, I kept the first copy for myself, but I've been donating books to libraries and to other places and for schools so that other people can read it, especially children, give them something different, something that you can relate to.
And when you think about it, you're a published author, your work is out there for everybody. JG, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
Being able to see people smile when they read the story. Being able to get their opinion. I like to see people enjoy something that is not going to scare them, not blood, guts, and gore, but something they can really relate to and want to pick up again. It makes me feel so good. I know I can communicate with people on that level.
And the writing of the book, that's only part of the whole process. You hand your manuscript off to Christian Faith Publishing, and you get started with all of that. So, JG, what did you find the most challenging part to you of that publishing end of things?
Editing. Because what you think in your mind and what you write down are two different things. And I enjoy being able to get feedback on how to make it better so that's more understandable. It makes me feel better as I go through each step. I'm achieving something, a new level.
And I have a feeling you got some more books in you, JG. Have you thought about what you're going to do down the road here?
Actually, we're working on a vampire story right now that ties in with the Nordic history or the Nordic myths of the ice giants. And it's a kind of a little bit modern day vampire story. So that's our next step.
So while you're writing, JG, is writer's block ever something that you have to deal with?
Of course. But, you take a couple of days off, you go out, you relax, you go on a little bit of travel and come back, and the story just floods right in there again. You sit down and you just can't stop typing.
And a lot of our listeners right now are authors who are just starting out. So, JG, is there any other advice that you might be able to throw out there for them?
Don't stop dreaming. Just keep thinking about it. And if you dream about writing, write. Even if it's even a page or two a night, just write, because you never know what you write now may become a bigger story a year or two down the road. Never stop writing.
That's some great advice. Well, readers are definitely in store for quite a journey in this book, and if you're listening, go check this out for sure. Again, the title of the book is Pandora's Space Tales. It's written by J.G. Cosgrove and DG Trujillo, and is published by Christian Faith Publishing, so find it at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. JG, thank you again for coming on the show and talking to me all about this. It was really great talking with you.
Anytime, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
The book I'm looking at right now is a comprehensive guide to managing your finances and credit. It's written by Charles Chuck Mathews, and it's titled Let Me See Your Money Talk, Personal Finance and Credit Education for Today's Economy. And Chuck is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about this. Chuck, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Hey, you are welcome, and it's my pleasure to be on.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I'm excited to learn about Let Me See Your Money Talk. Chuck, can you tell me what readers are going to find here?
They're going to find a very comprehensive and in-depth look at financial literacy and credit education in the book, things that currently now are not taught in any school or any place that I'm aware of. Purpose is to have people educated to be able to master and apply the principles in the book to have their financial lives be a lot sweeter and smoother.
What sorts of readers do you think this would help out the most?
I am feeling very strongly that upper middle school on through high school and college, and of course with adults who did not receive that financial education through normal family interactions. So it's written to be easy to read and application where it can be just very, very effectively implemented. And I'm very hopeful of having it as a curriculum in school, middle school, high school, or college. So.
Yeah, finances and credit, that can be so overwhelming. It can seem so complex to a lot of us. So it sounds like that this really boils it down and helps us understand even the normal people like me.
Yes, it is. Credit is just one of those things where people they think they're doing the right thing the right way, and it ends up hurting and damaging their credit score, as well as the importance of budgeting, savings, having affairs in order, and having our identities and credit monitored and protected best it can be. Of course, there's no way to stop identity theft, but put systems in place to make it more difficult and to be able to detect it earlier and then remedy it should it happen.
So, Chuck, what inspired you to write this?
I have been doing seminars with business partners around the country for going on 15 years now. One thing we used to always say was credit isn't taught anywhere. Financial education and literacy isn't taught anywhere. And I began to wonder, why not? And I read a very important writing by George Bernard Shaw some years ago, and it says, some people see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not? And that just rang a bell and just really got my attention that why not? It's time. Chuck, let's do it.
Are you new to this whole thing, writing, publishing, and all that, or are you experienced in it, Chuck?
This is my first book. I mean, I've written processes and that one in my career up till retirement. So writing was something that I enjoyed doing, but a novel and sitting down and doing something that's going to be published, that's something I never could have dreamed or imagined till it happened.
Was this a long process then for you, being your first time, and there's a lot to learn, I'm sure?
Yes, it was. The subject matter I know inside and out, but putting it in a deliverable in a manner in which it flows actually started on the book before COVID. And pick it up, set it down, get motivated, set it down, get going. And my wife one day says, why don't you, and when are you going to finish the book you started? And I said, okay, it's time. And went ahead and completed it. The publisher I was very pleased with. I've heard some horror stories about publishing companies and doing my due diligence and with Covenant Books, and I've been nothing but pleased with the interaction and the partnership that we forged together.
What was it like for you then when you got your first copy in and this is finally a real thing, your finished product, Let Me See Your Money Talk was there in your hands? What was that like, Chuck?
When I got that delivery to my house, I held it up. I mean, nothing's going to compare to holding a newborn, of course, but in a different way. I mean, something that I penned and developed, and now I have the finished product in hand. I mean, it was a sense of pride that I guess only a published author would really know. But closest thing to those who have not published anything, if you develop something that you patented, or like I said, nothing competes with holding a child or grandchild, but that feeling on a scale is very, very emotional.
Again, the title is Let Me See Your Money Talk, Personal Finance and Credit Education for Today's Economy. It's written by Charles Chuck Mathews and published by Covenant Books, so it's basically available everywhere. Go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and down the street at your local bookshop. You'll be able to pick this up. Now, Chuck, I got to thank you again for coming on this show and telling me all about this. It was great talking.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for the podcast, and I'm very hopeful that the listeners receive something from it or are motivated to do their thing, as they say.
There are some really important messages in the new memoir written by Megan Ross. It's titled The Silent Speaker, An Open Letter to My Daughters. And I get to find out all about this. The author, Megan, is sitting right here with me. Megan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm curious. I want to learn about The Silent Speaker. So can you tell me what readers are in store for?
They're in store for a lot, but it's a memoir about my personal journey of becoming a fashion and beauty influencer on social media and having a blog and living life with what that entails, seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and getting to the point where through my faith and healing, eventually finding my redemption through Christ. So the book kind of journeys through that. It offers pretty valuable insights on the dangers of social media, just with kids, and especially at that level. And really the importance of reading scripture and keeping God at the forefront. I think our culture is slipping away from that.
What sorts of readers were you writing this for, Megan?
Initially, I started out for my daughters. I have 2 young daughters. They're not on social media yet, but I know with it evolving, it's going to be inevitable. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was to prepare them to what to look out for, kind of the red flag. And then it turned into for parents. You know, it's never too late that if you've drifted to find Christ, to look at your life and how it's leading. And, you know, you don't have to self-medicate to kind of numb the reality of life. It's kind of for, I would say, young adults and for parents.
So what was that spark? What made you think, I'm going to sit down and get started on this book? I got to write this thing.
Well, it's kind of interesting how it happened. It's a journey through living my life one way. I was a Christian, but I did what I saw fit. I was in control. Being on social media as an influencer, you know, seeing what was happening and as an adult, not realizing what was happening to me mentally. And it wasn't until, honestly, I think God used my daughter to kind of wake me up, and it changed the trajectory, I think, of my whole entire life. And just that journey leading, eventually surrendering my life to Christ, I started seeing different perspectives of social media, my life, kind of all that entails, and looking at the world around us and the world my daughters would grow up in. It wanted me to warn them. I still at that point wasn't sure how. I thought maybe getting back on social media and influencing in a different way. But 3 o'clock in the morning, early one morning, I just woke up wide awake, heavy on my heart to write a book. So I started writing.
Have you ever done anything like this before when it comes to this sort of writing and publishing?
No, this is definitely out of the blue. I mean, I think when I was blogging, I would write blog posts for my personal blog, more short and sweet, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, but writing a book was definitely not on my radar.
So from the time you got started on it, clear up until it was finished and ready to go out there, was this a long journey for you?
It took, honestly, about 10 months to start and finish. It wasn't something I would write every day. Probably a little unconventional, but whenever I had the urge to write, I would write. And some days I would write, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning before our kids got up. I would wake up wide awake wanting to write my thoughts down. Some days it would go 3, 4, 5 days without writing. So it kind of was when I was inspired to write, when it hit me to write, I would write. So I would say about 10 months.
And then that day came, you opened your mailbox. There it finally was, your first copy of The Silent Speaker. You were holding it. What was that like for you, Megan?
Oh, a bunch of emotions. The first being like, oh boy, here we go. A little scared because, your personal life is about to be out there, but also excited because I think I'm finally doing what I'm meant to do. And if my story can help one person, then it was worth it.
And when it came to that publishing process, whenever you handed that manuscript off to Christian Faith, what did you find the most challenging part about that?
Letting go of your baby, so to speak. Something that was personal and letting it go to have other people read it and make that judgment of it. And I got to the point where it's like, I have to step back. Here it is. You can make your decision and it's going to go where it wants to go.
The title is The Silent Speaker, an open letter to my daughters. It's written by Megan Ross and is published by Christian Faith Publishing, so really you can get it anywhere. Go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores and you'll be able to pick it up. Megan, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking with you as well.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.